Afternoon, everybody. It's your boy Al. Happy Monday. This is the first official video that I'm doing for my actual boxing channel. Some of you have been following me on YouTube, and I have a channel that covers a lot of different subjects, and I have a few people as my boxing network is expanding who want to talk boxing and just boxing. And I thought about doing this some time before to just create a channel for just my boxing content and make that available so that I can talk and we can talk about different subjects, boxing. So this is my launch, I guess you could say. I already put one of my most popular videos on the boxing channel for my boxing alias, H-Town Hitman. So this is a launch on a boxing YouTube channel, and I want to invite all of you to like and subscribe. For those of you who like to talk boxing with not a deranged fan, but an intelligent, unbiased boxing mind, that's me. I'm your boy. We can talk about all subjects, past boxers, present boxers, and what the sport looks like in the future. Speaking of the future, that's what I want to talk about here today. As a boxing historian, a person who loves boxing, former boxer, amateur, competing on amateur level 1, national titles at the national level, and amateur level, I should say. I was excited to watch the boxing on Olympic boxing this year, particularly because a few years back they did away with the stipulation of wearing headgear. Took it back to the days of the 60s and the 70s where you didn't have to wear headgear in the Olympics. So I was particularly excited to watch the talent in boxing and see what the USA had to offer as far as boxing talent is concerned. And I've been put off a little bit by the fact that there is hardly any boxing. Matter of fact, I haven't seen any boxing, particularly here in the United States in Houston, Texas, from any Olympic U.S. boxers on network television. And I have had people, I made a post on a page that I follow on Facebook expressing my frustration with the lack of boxing that I'm seeing. And some people were giving me responses like, well, you can log into this channel and go over here to this channel and log into this site and see boxing. And all of that's cool, but I have a problem with boxing not being on the Olympic stage, broadcast on television, particularly in the States, which is on NBC, for here in Houston, it's Channel 2, but it's been on NBC. Now, I know that there have been, for a few years, they've been running different channels, broadcasting different things, because you can't have every Olympic event on at the same time, right? So I understand that. But boxing for years has been a pillar of the Olympics. And I understand that for a while the USA was down in boxing, but we have some kids that are doing some wonderful things. I think we have 4 guys that are guaranteed to medal. Jones, Cunningham, a few other guys. We'll have the first super heavyweight medalist since Riddick Bowe in '88. So I'm excited, but the problem that I have with Olympics not being broadcast, number one, it's been a staple for the Olympics here in America for years, and there's a reason for that. Number one, boxing, as much as it's declined, it's still a sport that when a big fight's on, everybody watches, right? Mayweather, Pacquiao, Triple G, Canelo, and some of the contemporaries of today. And I've been frustrated because one of the things we need to understand about Olympic boxing is, for boxers, this is their chance to shine before they go on the professional stage. Now, I understand that every Olympian works hard and wants to get their shine on. But for boxers in particular, there's a lot more at stake. Because for boxers, this is how they develop a fan base before they go pro. A lot of these guys, a lot of these athletes in other sports, this is it. There is no pro ranks, for trampoline jumping. There is no pro ranks for skeet shooting, marksman, none of this. But there's a pro ranks for boxers. And the reason why it's so important is because this is how they get their fan base. This is why boxing, this is one of the reasons boxing has remained so popular, had remained so popular over the years. Boxing has declined for many reasons over the years, but one of the reasons it's declined is because it doesn't set up the next generation for their pro careers. What boxing did, and what boxing has always done, U.S. amateur boxing in particular, it's always given U.S. amateur boxers the same stage and platform as college football players and basketball players. What makes the NFL and NBA so popular is that before Peyton Manning gets drafted, before Shaquille O'Neal gets drafted, before Michael Jordan gets drafted, before Tim Duncan gets drafted, before LaDainian Tomlinson gets drafted, Derrick Henry, before any of these guys get drafted, by the time they get to the pros, they already have a following. And that following is the people who started watching them at the collegiate level, right? So when Peyton Manning turns pro, not only do you have the diehard NFL fans who are going to watch him, but you have some people who are going to start watching him who may not have watched the NFL, but because they were diehard Tennessee fans, diehard Peyton Manning fans, they are going to migrate over to follow him because they'll say, what? He was so phenomenal in college, I have to go over and see what he does as a pro, right? And for boxing, that's what amateur boxing and Olympic boxing particularly did for Cassius Clay, Sugar Ray Leonard, the Spinks brothers, Pernell Whitaker, Tyrell Biggs, Meldrick Taylor, Evander Holyfield, Roy Jones, Oscar De La Hoya, Kennedy McKinney, Riddick Bowe, Ray Mercer. It did that for these guys. They had performances in the Olympics that made people say, man, they were great in the Olympics. Let me follow them to see what they do as a pro. It's one of the reasons why Muhammad Ali was able to get a title shot as Cassius Clay after only 19 fights, Pernell Whitaker after only 14 fights. The reason why Oscar De La Hoya had such a wild following as a pro. Sugar Ray Leonard, whose popularity was crazy. He had 7-Up commercials fresh out of the Olympics, because everybody knows the people who get Olympic glory get endorsements, they get notoriety, they get noticed. And for boxers, it's important because, right, listen, boxers don't have a Final Four, a Sweet 16 college NCAA career. Boxers don't have a NCAA football schedule. They don't have a Rose Bowl, a Sugar Bowl, a Cotton Bowl, a Senior Bowl. They don't have any of these things. All they have is their amateur career, and they have the Olympics. The Olympics is their Final Four. It's their Sweet 16. It's their Rose Bowl. It's their big chance to show people, hey, this is who I am. I'm going for the Olympics. So that person can watch them, or the masses can watch them and say, wow, they were really great in the Olympics, man. Let me keep watching him to see what he does as a pro. And what's happened is, because they have everything else now on TV, gymnastics has been a staple. Yes, we know. Track and field has been a staple. Yes, we know. But they put any and everything now on prime time. Sunday, I was eating dinner. No, it wasn't Sunday. It was Saturday. I was watching the Olympics in the middle of the day on NBC, and they had the trampoline competition on. Which, okay, I get it, trampoline. But number one, that sport has been an official sport for maybe a few Olympics. And number two, what are we talking about here? Trampoline jumping, boxing is a historical staple. There are guys who need this scene. They need this notoriety to set themselves up at the next level in the pros. And we're putting everything else on television. And so for me, we have 4 guys who are medaling. There hasn't been one of these fights on TV. These guys will go pro and nobody will know who they are because the Olympics has failed. We've been so caught up in the Simone Biles controversy. We've been so caught up in, I can't remember the young lady's name who didn't make it in track and field. Not sure it would have mattered anyway because the Jamaicans just ran away with everything. Congratulations to the young lady who broke FloJo's record, by the way. But I think that we need to revisit, especially now that the boxers don't have headgear and we can really see some good fighting. I was watching a young kid, Cunningham, I believe that's his name, on Sunday when I was out to eat with my family. And the young man put in some work, won his fight, going to a medal round. I know we have 4 guys that are going to medal rounds. Nothing on primetime TV. When did that start happening? Roy Jones wouldn't be Roy Jones without, even though as sad as it was to him get ripped off, it made people say, man, I'm gonna watch him because I saw how good he was, even though he got ripped off. When he turns pro, I'm gonna want to know what he does. Oscar De La Hoya, people wanted to know what he was gonna do. This famed 84 team, the famed 76 team. So I believe that we need to reshift and put some attention back into boxing. There are a lot of things that we can fix to make boxing a popular sport again, but one of the things that we need to do is we need to bring the attention back to the guys in the amateurs, because the amateurs is where it all starts. The Olympics is where it all starts. The Olympics is where these guys get to be known. It's where they get the exposure, the notoriety. It's where we see who our stars of tomorrow are. And it's always been a great thing for boxing to have guys come from the amateurs, whether you think they're getting too much exposure, like Roberto Duran did with Sugar Ray Leonard, like a lot of people did when Oscar De La Hoya came out, or whether you think that they're getting the exposure they deserve because they're going to be a superstar. Any exposure is good exposure in boxing, whether you're for the exposure they're getting or against it, whether you watch them to watch them fail or watch them to see if they're going to succeed. Any exposure is good exposure. But right now, these kids are getting no prime time network exposure. And I'm waiting to see if any of these guys get to the gold medal round, because if they get to the gold medal rounds, fight for Olympic gold for the USA, and the USA doesn't put these guys on network television, it's going to be criminal. And someone needs to say something about it, because boxing could still be a sport that thrives if we give the next generation the attention. Look at the attention that even the guys who came from high school, like LeBron James. Some of you saying, well, NBA for a long time let kids come straight out of high school, so they didn't have a college career. Yeah, and the NBA suffered because of it. The NBA suffered mightily because of it. There were some years during that whole come straight out of high school debacle, a few years after the Kevin Garnetts and the Kobes and the McGrady's and the Jermaine O'Neals of the world hit the scene. There are a few years in the Tyson Chandler, Eddie Curry years, and some years after that, the Kwame Brown years. There were some years for those drafts that entire draft classes came out and people didn't know who they were, and the popularity of the league suffered. Not only did the popularity of the league suffer, but what did we see? We started to see whole drafts where the entire draft was nothing but people from overseas. I remember a couple of drafts where like 90% of the draft were people from overseas, because the NBA scouts were convinced that these kids coming straight out of high school were not ready. So yeah, the NBA suffered because of that. And what did the NBA do? The NBA made a stipulation, came to an agreement with NCAA, that we need to make these guys go to college at least 1 year so they can develop some kind of following before they come here. Because this whole thing of them coming straight out of high school isn't working. Why? Because not only are they not ready, but people don't know who in the heck they're watching. They don't know these kids. Let them go and have a spectacular Final Four, Sweet 16. Let them go and have a spectacular 1 year in college, so at least people will know who they are. So even the NBA has shown us that this trying to watch people who you don't know does not work. I know we had LeBron come out, but LeBron was on the cover of Sports Illustrated at 16 years old. So immediately that amateur exposure, and then they put his high school games on ESPN. So that amateur exposure made him a superstar before he ever got to the league. But who did you have that same year? Carmelo Anthony having that spectacular freshman year leading Syracuse to the national title. Dwayne Wade having that spectacular coming out party at Marquette. And look at what they did for Dwayne Wade. Nobody knew who Dwayne Wade was, but that 1 year and then that one run, but he was coming through dunking backwards on everybody for Marquette, leading Marquette, I think, to the Elite Eight it was. Made people know who Dwayne Wade was. So when he got drafted, guess what? We didn't have to ask who Dwayne Wade was. We didn't have to ask who Chris Bosh was. We watched him at Georgia Tech. Or was it Georgia Tech or Wake Forest? I think it was Georgia Tech. That 1 year, he dominated. We didn't have to ask who these guys was. We saw them dominate on the amateur level, and they got the amateur level exposure. And so we need to see that amateur level exposure for the boxers. These guys need this exposure. This Olympics is their Sweet 16. It's their Rose Bowl. And it's not fair that they have to fight on MSNBC or USA. Or it's not fair that they have to fight on the internet channels. And I understand that it's a different world. Everybody, doesn't watch television like they used to. Still, give these guys some primetime exposure. Give these guys some network exposure. These guys out there putting in work. We got 4 medalists, the first time in years that we've had a super heavyweight going to medal. We got 4 guaranteed medalists in the boxing ranks, in the boxing world. So we need to give these guys the exposure they deserve. I hope you guys agree with me. If you don't agree with me, tell me why you don't agree with me. Put it in the comment section. Again, welcome to my boxing station. We hope you guys like what the content. We're going to be doing a lot of things. We're going to be doing feature matchups. We're going to be doing fantasy fights, things of that nature. My first video I posted was a fantasy fight video from a few years ago between Tommy Hearns and Floyd Mayweather. So check that out. Tell me what you think. Put some comments in that one. Click like, click subscribe. Hitman, H-Town Hitman. I'll be doing boxing videos several a week because I love to talk boxing. Whenever I get a thought, I want to put it out there and see what you guys think. So let me know what you guys think. Do the Olympic boxers need more exposure, or is it not worth the time? I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Peace.